Hi, I'm John Schott, the beverage director at the People's Drug in Kings Ransom.
And I'm Victoria Bergeson, owner of The Hour and the Modern Home Bar. And we are thrilled to be your hosts for the Old Town Cocktail Virtual Happy Hour, sponsored by Old Town Business.
So we'd like to invite you every third Thursday to join us for a virtual happy hour, where we'll visit with some of our friends at a local restaurant, meet one of our local bartenders, and we'll talk with one of our friends from the spirit industry, and we'll get to visit one of the local shops here around Old Town as well.
And we decided for this first venture we would interview each other.
Yeah.
So we're the guinea pigs.
Okay.
And we've invited our special friend Scott Harris from Catoctin Creek to talk with us about his wonderful spirits.
I'm excited. You want to get started?
Let's go.
All right, let's do it. Okay, friends, hopefully at home you're sitting down with one of these cocktails from People's Drug in front of you right now. And I just wanted to show you how we made it here before it got to your hands at home right now. So today we are making a Negroni made with rye whiskey, which is also called a Boulevardier. And for our rye whiskey today, of course, we'll be using Catoctin Creek. And to make this, I'm going to start with 1.5 ounces of Catoctin Creek and pour into my mixing glass. Now, I'm also going to add, instead of a vermouth, which is typical in a Boulevardier or a Negroni, I'm going to add a Caperitif, which is a fortified wine. So just another way of looking at the classic recipe and changing it. And 3/4 ounce of a Caperitif. Back into my mixing glass. And for my bitter component, we're using a Braulio, which is a barrel-aged Amaro as well. 3/4 ounce. And again, using my jigger every time. And put this down. Now, I'm still gonna chill the glassware first, so there's no point in me taking all the time to make a really nice, cold, delicious cocktail and then pouring it into a glass that's room temperature. Is immediately gonna change the flavor of it. It's easy to do, just fill your glass with ice first. And talk briefly about stirring our cocktail. I like to fill my mixing glass almost all the way up with ice. If you fill it all the way up and start to stir, there's not enough room in there and some stuff's gonna fall out. If you fill it up not enough, we're not gonna get enough dilution either. Clockwise, counterclockwise does not matter when we're stirring, but really ideally what does matter and is important while we're stirring the cocktail is that I'm looking to give about a 20% increase in volume in this cocktail from the dilution of the water. The water mixing into the cocktail is very important to open up the spirit and let us taste all the things involved in it as well. And once you start touching the outside of your mixing glass, you'll see it'll be nice and cold. You'll get a little bit of condensation on the side. And I'm gonna dump out my ice. So now I have a really nice cold glass. Now traditionally you would put a julep strainer on top of here, but you can also use a Hawthorne strainer too. And just remember, if you're making cocktails at home, whatever you can use to strain out of the mixing glass, or if you're just using a pint glass at home, it's totally fine too. I'm gonna throw in my rock, pour over top, make sure we got no ice coming out, but also make sure you get all the last drops of there in the cocktail as well. And last but not least, a very important component of our cocktail will be our citrus, and in this case, we'll be using an orange citrus zest to add that component to it. Right over the top, I like to put it around the rim like this just to give it a little extra taste, and we just drop it right in the side of the glass. And this is our rye Negroni, aka a Boulevardier made with Catoctin Creek rye.
So John, we're here at your wonderful establishment, the People's Drug.
Yep.
You've been here a couple of years now, the restaurant's been here.
Yep.
I would love for you to tell our audience what exactly kind of your background, but also kind of a little bit about how this place started and
Sure.
maybe the name.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the People's Drug, and we have the drug sign over the bar, which is probably the first thing that everybody notices. I know that when we were setting up in May of 2018, which is when we opened, when that light would go on and people would pass by, everyone would stop and take pictures of it and wonder what the heck's going in here. The idea for us was to make a neighborhood cocktail bar and also have a neighborhood sandwich shop. So in the daytime, a real comfort food lunch place to go to, and at nighttime have a really nostalgic feel for cocktails and kind of a gathering place for the neighborhood. So I don't know if you're familiar with the People's Drug. My People's Drug was on the corner of North Powhatan and Arlington, and it was the kind of place where it had a neighborhood feel. We wanted to bring that vibe to a cocktail bar and sandwich shop. At the time, it seemed like a really cool opportunity for me. I was beverage director over at Muscle Bar. There's a few of those around the area. My friends suggested there's a place, they're opening a cocktail bar in Old Town that's going to be really different, small, and unique, and they need a person who can run the beverage program in front of house and basically do all these odds and ends. And I knew that Old Town was really known for food and drink. I always had these like dreams of working behind the bar and waving, to people out the window as they go. And I get that now, which is a lot of fun. So we started with 7 cocktails to see where everybody would, to kind of get a vibe of the town. And now we're at this point, we've put out at least over 300 cocktails, and since we've opened.
And it's really nice seeing, just knowing your bar here and all the tinctures and all the bitters and all
Yeah.
the handmade. You really do handcraft a lot of the products that you use in your cocktails,
Oh.
which makes them stand out.
Thank you. Absolutely. I think we always say, make a joke that what's the best drink, right? The best drink is one that someone made for you, right? And if we're gonna make you a drink, it has to be made with careful thought, consideration, and love, always love, right? And the tinctures, the bitters, the vermouth blends, the Amaro blends, infusions, orgeats, syrups, is all part of it. And balancing those things and learning the best way to make them. Fresh citrus, of course, is so so important to cocktails. And what you see out here is a community that appreciates it too, and you want to just keep feeding right back.
And let's talk about COVID for a second. So
Of course.
How did you pivot? Because we're all doing it here.
Okay, it was difficult and remains that as such. We closed down here. We closed down our other restaurant, which, the Handover in King's Ransom, and we all sat here and we said, what's our plan, right? And it's just the room was silent. And we were just going to run 7 days a week and figure it out. So pivoting into go, we did like frozen drinks to go, we did cocktail kits to go, and so trying every week to do something new and different to just stay relevant, and let people know that we're still here creating.
And so what are your plans going forward?
So going forward, here we're now. Here we're at People's Drug, of course. Yes, we're at the People's Drug. We're open Tuesday through Sunday.
Off King Street?
Yep, right off. We're on 103 North Alfred. You see Sweet Green right on the corner, and we're just tucked right off the side. So if you haven't been here before, we're just hidden off to the side. And we're open Tuesday through Sunday right now. We're 3 till 11. We have full cocktail program. We just did a new fall menu here. We have 25 cocktails on it now. 4 of them are hot drinks, and then we have 7 other categories that all have 3 drinks in them as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, let's switch gears now.
Okay.
Let's talk about this Boulevardier that you're making us.
Yes. So we're taking a Boulevardier, which is a rye Negroni, and really what we love to do here at the People's Drug is take something that you're used to, a cocktail that you're used to, and put our own spin on it to just give you a different perspective or introduce you to something new as well. Traditionally, in a Boulevardier, we will have whiskey, whether it's bourbon or rye, sweet vermouth, and then we have Campari. So really, we're taking this
and those
recipe.
in a classic, it's like
equal parts. Yeah, we do
right?
we do equal parts. So it's
Right.
1-1-1.
Right.
So what you have is the bitter and the sweet vermouth balance out, and we highlight the flavors of the whiskey in it.
Okay. Now, what do you do?
So what I did to switch it up, so we just look at this and just in a different light. So instead of our fortified wine, which would be a sweet vermouth we typically use, we're going to replace it with a different fortified wine, which is Caperitif. It's a South African fortified wine. It's often referred to as the ghost ingredient in cocktails because it fell out of production for a long time. So if you're digging through old cocktail books, like Savoy cocktail book from 1930, and before that, replace the vermouth, a fortified one, with the Caperitif. The Caperitif has a little more spice to it. Yeah, got a bitter. It does a little bit of a bitter orange, but with some spice to it as well. And it's made with all natural ingredients. So we have our spice coming from the Caperitif.
All right.
Now we're also going to pair it with, instead of the Campari, our bitter component to the cocktail, We're replacing it with a Braulio. A Braulio is a barrel-aged Amaro from the Italian Alps. Now we've replaced 2 items in it with 2 fun ones. The barrel-aged Italian liqueur, it adds the bitterness to it. It also adds some of those baking spices back in too. So we're using our Catoctin Creek Roundstone Rye, which is a young whiskey. So I find that using that barrel-aged Amaro helps add to those flavors too. So we have a barrel and a barrel, and we get similar things playing off of each other as well. Now we also changed the breakdown of it. I really want to highlight that whiskey. So we did 1.5 ounces of whiskey, a 3/4 ounce of the Comparatif, and a 3/4 ounce of the Braulio. And just to tie everything together at the end, we did the zest of orange. So we had those aromatics of the citrus coming off the top of it and very inviting and letting us know what's to come. You have the sweetness of the orange, and as we taste it, we'll get more bitter as we enjoy the cocktail.
Well,
So that's what we did.
Drink, and we hope you're enjoying it. And
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be available here.
Yep, available. Yeah, available
It's now
to
on
go.
the menu?
Yep, absolutely. It's on our menu regularly now, and we'll have it available to go so people can order it when they do our virtual cocktail hour with us today. I hope you're enjoying it at home right now. Hope you're enjoying it as we speak. Yeah.
Well, I think that we are done here, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to taking you over at my place.
Oh, I'm looking forward to going over and checking it out.
So let's do it.
All right, cheers.
I absolutely love the 1000 block of King Street. You can start your morning with a fabulous egg sandwich from Lori's Table, then maybe head over to Bella Cara, where you can get the latest in cosmetics and skincare, and maybe get your hair done after that at Dry Bar. Need a new outfit to go with that new hairdo and makeup? You can go shop Current Boutique. Then it's probably time for lunch. You can grab a tasty sandwich at the King Street Cafe, or maybe get some spicy Thai food at Sanfo Thai Cuisine. After that, well, why not try out your skills painting? You can go to Paint This, and maybe come over to my store, get a little new cocktail gear, and then go visit my next door neighbor, Lotus Blooms, where you could get some indulgent evening wear. Then it's time for dinner, and you can head over to Hank's Oyster Bar, where you can get a great seafood dinner, and then maybe the next morning visit Pauline Books, a Catholic bookstore, where you can get a little something to forgive all your misadventures. Welcome to the hour.
Great. We're here in the showroom, beautiful showroom of the Hour right now.
Thanks, John.
It looks, yeah, of course. Victoria looks great in here. It looks amazing. Can you tell me a little bit about your store, the Hour, kind of how this came to be? What was your inspiration here?
I'm a connoisseur of cocktails,
Yeah.
you know, and I had another life prior to this entrepreneurship as being a retail owner. I've been in Old Town since the late 90s, and I love history, I love cocktails, and after my youngest kind of got into grade school, I thought, let's start a cocktail store.
Nice.
And I was like, everybody knows what a cocktail store is, right?
Yeah.
No, so it was one of those things where I thought, well, you know, I love to cook, and I love the idea of Williams Sonoma, and kind of thought, you know, there should be something like that was just designated for cocktails.
Sure, of course.
And kind of helping the connoisseur at home who really likes to make drinks and entertain, and kind of be a place where you could pick up interesting things for the home bar.
And we're surrounded by this beautiful vintage glassware I see everywhere.
I found it all like little pieces of art that were just these beautiful things to behold and also to hold and to use and enjoy. And I thought when I opened the store that I would have this small little collection of vintage, and most of it would be new product that I found at market. Started the concept of the store a week before the market collapsed.
Oh, yeah.
In 2008. So not necessarily a great time to open a cocktail store.
Sure.
Or so I thought, but as it turned out, just like now, people are drinking.
Yes.
So they were back then, and within a short period of time, I realized that this concept was a concept that was going to be here to stay.
I see that we have some new glassware as well from the Modern Home Bar.
Yeah, so that was my latest inspiration. After years of going to market and realizing that a lot of the product that was available that was new was very one note. Not a lot of style, not a lot of different and I really wanted something that would really fit in with my vintage collection.
Sure.
And so I decided to start my own business, another business.
Right.
And started creating my own designs that were vintage inspired. For my glassware, I use a new technology that's kind of like a 3D printer.
Very cool.
They're dishwasher safe, and they meet all the accoutrements for today's lifestyle, because a lot of my vintage really is hand wash only.
Sure.
And then the barware I started creating, I took a lot of the inspiration from vintage barware that I have in my own personal collection, and decided that for the home bar, I really wanted to create products that had multi-purposes. So I created a shaker that has a built-in strainer.
Very cool.
My pitcher, the first one I just produced, has a pour spout that catches the ice. And my stir spoon is a muddler. So everything kind of has multi-purpose tools to it, but it has a little bit more flair and style than what you normally see in today's market.
It fits the modern needs, but it still has that classic and vintage feel of what makes the glassware, the vintage glassware, so special.
Yeah, and for the home. I mean, it's your home. You want it to reflect who you are and what your personality is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about even the hour. I mean, it's been around for now. We're going on 12 years in the spring.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, it just, there's something here for anybody, because it really, your home should reflect who you are. Your cocktail should reflect what you like to drink.
Yep.
And it is important kind of how the glass feels in the hand, how it feels on the lip, how it looks.
Yeah, of course.
And how it fits in your environment, and how it represents who you are.
I know that. So you and I had first met when you were writing, I believe, your second book, Old Town Drinks. And I always love when I come into the store and I can see the book up there, and it's like really cool to be a part of that. And when I came in today, I noticed that there is a new book on the shelves. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on there?
I will. Well, I'll back up one. I have to tell you, thank you for being in the last book. My first book was it's called Capital Cocktails, and it was about the DC cocktail scene back in 2012.
Yep.
Is when it came out. And when I wrote the second book, I really wanted to highlight all of the wonderful bartenders and restaurants here in Old Town. We've got such an amazing collection. That's one of the things I'm so excited about with this virtual happy hour, is that we really are going to spend some time showing everyone what we already know. Right. And that is that there's so many wonderful places to get a drink here in town.
We are beyond lucky to get something to eat, to get something to drink, and to go shopping.
Yeah, we've got everything.
We are rich with options.
And we're a close-knit community, and we're here to help each other out. And that's what I wanted to emphasize in the second book. Sure. And really, I was honored that
was such a cool thing.
So this third book came about when I just having the store here. I've had so many of my customers come in, especially if they're new to the cocktail scene and they're new to the home bar. They know to go to People's and get a great cocktail, but in terms of how do I do this at home? Sure. And so what glasses do I need, or what are the basic cocktails, or how do you do this? And so when COVID hit, everyone had to kind of pivot, and I thought, well, there are truly more people that are kind of exploring this idea of the home bar and cocktails at home.
Absolutely.
And the Zoom cocktail hours and all these virtual things that are happening. And I thought, now's a good time, because I've got time. I'm in my own house, and why don't I put together kind of a how-to manual?
Impressive, by the way.
So the book is called Home Bar Basics. Yeah. And it's cocktails at home anytime.
Nice.
So, and it's
gorgeous looking book.
It's 35 of my favorite cocktails that are easy to make.
Sure.
I have some of my tips here in terms of for the home bar, some of the principles that I follow. Sure. One of them is strongly that we should go to bars such as yours and others around town who, get inspired and kind of learn from the masters. And for the home bar, really kind of start out slowly and kind of build, but also experiment. Part of the fun thing about having a home bar, and also I guess about being a bartender, is really getting to play with flavors. Oh, of course. Just like you do with cooking, and kind of, and the whole point of this book was to kind of get those new to the market, kind of interested.
People are starting to delve into it. So many more questions come up: where to start? How do I make things? And always, with glassware, vintage and classic. With cocktails, it's the same. You start with some classic cocktails and learn what your flavor profile is, and go from there. So, a great time to put out a book like this, and really, really helpful to all these people who are interested in making cocktails at home too. So another thing I was going to say, speaking of congratulations, I did see something on the window that's really exciting, and I'd heard about it before, and I was hoping to drop it on you. So Southern Living magazine recently gave you a really nice nod and really nice nomination.
Yes, we were nominated, and then we received the 7th place as one of the Southern's best boutiques for 2020.
Nice. Yeah.
And they came out this spring. Of course, COVID hit, and so we didn't really get to capitalize much on it, but we were so honored because we were in great company. Number one was, I think, Joanna Gaines with Magnolia, and Reese Witherspoon's
I've heard of
her business. Yes. She's got a really wonderful store called Draper James. She came in 3rd, and we came in 7th. So we thought, well, we're in good company.
I'm glad to see you getting them recognition. They certainly deserve it.
It was quite an honor. And,
very cool.
We were thrilled.
The store, by the way, looks gorgeous. It looks a lot different than the last time I was in. What right now, if I want to come to the store, or if I want to look at glassware, look at modern home bar, or look at vintage stuff, or bar tools, how do I support the business right now? How do I visit? What are the ways that I can do that right now?
Okay. The first thing is that we're online.
Yes.
And then we're located here at 1015 King Street in Old Town. We are opening 23rd and 24th is kind of our grand opening of this month. And we'll be open after that weekend. We'll be open by appointment until probably the holidays. So just stay in tune. Everything will be on the website.
Sure.
And then the Modern Home Bar also has its own website.
Oh, wow.
themodernhomebar.com.
Excellent.
So we're really busy with that business as well.
So you can make appointments for in-store shopping. We can order online.
And we've got curbside pickups available, shipping if you're out of town. So we're going to also now switch over, and I think we've got a special guest that we're going to introduce here, our mutual friend Scott Harris. So let's go chat with him.
All right, let's do it.
So tell everybody a little bit about how you guys started and where you are now.
Sure. So we were the first in our area, the first distillery within about 100 miles or so. And so we were doing, making organic rye whiskey. Rye whiskey was a thing, right? It was a new thing. People hadn't been doing it really much up until then. There were a few big brands, but not much. And we were trying to tell the story of Virginia history, right? The history of rye as it was established in Virginia and then later spread into Pennsylvania and Maryland and all these other great places. And we were in love with that. And Virginia ABC was our first customer. We started selling into them in 2010, early in 2010. And so the first whiskeys that we put into the Virginia ABC were on the back of the bottle, says a month and a half old. It was so young. And it was good. It was certainly good enough, and people really liked it, but it was so young at that time.
Let's talk about 2010, 2009.
As I like to say, 20 years of government contracting and computers taught me a great love of drinking whiskey. So I was a big whiskey nerd, right? I was drinking all kinds of scotch and exploring through the palette, of scotch and bourbon. I was like, I want to make whiskey because, as so many people think, it's romantic, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I was at Bushmills in Northern Ireland, and we were walking through that standard tourist, experience that you get at Bushmills, right? And you're up on these catwalks, you're walking across the floor, and Bushmills is the one and only place where they make all of Bushmills for the whole world, right? So it's a huge factory, and there's like 8 big copper stills in there, and you're looking over that whole thing, and I looked at it and I just go, I want this, and it was huge, and we got it. So at that point, I was just infected. I had to do it. So I'm telling Becky, we didn't talk much about it, but she's a chemical engineer, right? So she had worked in manufacturing process, in bringing R&D projects into full-time production. She worked on these really cool programs, and so when I came to her and I said, I want you to be a distiller, you would make a great distiller as a chemical engineer. Her response to me was surprising. She was like, of course I would. She's like, distillation is some of the easiest chemistry there is. So she put it back on me. She said, but you need to make sure that we can make money making whiskey. So she didn't say no, but she was like, you have to write a business plan. Don't bother me with your ADD BS. Go write the business plan and then we'll talk. Probably thinking, oh, he'll get distracted and go somewhere else. But I was really miserable, so I was focused on that. So I wrote the business plan. I brought it back to her, and we sat down at the kitchen table. I can still remember it, sitting side by side, going through it, saying, this is what we're taking from our life savings, Becky and I had earned for 20 years of working, and we're going to take that money away, and we're going to use it and buy stuff and do this. And she said, well, this looks sound. I mean, your numbers look okay, but you need to take it to the bank and see if we can get a little bank money so we don't have to dip so deeply into our own money and do it. And so she told me to go to the bank. Now, again, this is 2009, right? So put you in context. Lehman Brothers has collapsed. Too big to fail, right? Countrywide Mortgage out of business completely, right? The world is crumbling financially, right. And she's saying, go to the bank and get a loan, right? For 30 pages of paper for a guy who's never done anything except work in a blue or white collar job, right? Yeah. So I go to the bank. I had 30 pages of narrative and 30 pages of spreadsheets, right? And I proudly presented them all to the banker. And their first question to me was, what's a distillery?
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm like, well, it's kind of like a winery. And okay, we understand wineries,
yeah.
That kind of thing. And so 2 weeks later, they call us back and they said, you've been approved.
I want to make sure I don't skip over this at any point. What's really significant is having Becky as a distiller and a head distiller, a female head distiller. Mm-hmm. Myself, some of my favorite, one of my favorite books about whiskey Distilled by Heather Green, mm-hmm. and I think that she makes great points about what women oftentimes overlooked in this industry, but have the best palates and nose especially for whiskeys, and do so well. And it's like, why wouldn't you have some women in whiskey? So she's the head distiller. Yeah. Are there many head distillers that are female? In
more now today than before.
Yeah.
Right. And it's funny because Becky's very humble. She's worked alongside Dave Pickerel at Mount Vernon, and he's worked with her, and he never contracted with us, but they almost had like just a friendship between them, and he always complimented her on her palate and her techniques and stuff. But she would never ever call herself a master distiller, right? She felt that was a title that should be conveyed upon someone rather than you just grab it, right? And boy, I respect the hell out of that coming from technology, where you'd have a kid out of college who calls himself a CTO and has never done a damn thing, and is running some startup that collapses in 18 months. Yeah. So she'd always taken a humble approach, and so her favorite term for what she does is chief distiller, because she's the chief, she's in charge. That says that she's in charge, and if somebody wants to in a magazine call her a master distiller, that's their opinion.
But she's earned that at that point. Absolutely. But to not call herself that speaks very highly about her as a person. She
has a fantastic palate, and she definitely leverages the women in our business. So we are a woman-owned business, and we have, I would say, approximately 50% of our employees are women, right? So it's pretty representative of the population, and women of color and different ethnicities. And she employs them, when we're doing barrel sampling today, even to pull samples and lets Denise and Maria and Melissa, all these women, taste through the samples. Because if she asks me and Desi, we just like guzzle it. We're just like, oh yeah, it was great. And she's like, no, I want you to tell me, what are you tasting? What are we going to make? Are we going to make 92 or 80, or what is this going to be? And I think that comes from also a woman-centered culture too, because women are traditionally more collaborative, right? They're not necessarily trying to hold everything for themselves so they can get ahead of the guy next to them, right? Yeah. And I admit that's what men do. That's what I do. That's what a lot of guys do. And so she's more team-oriented. She wants to talk it out with the group and come to some kind of group consensus. And I think that's really cool.
What was the inspiration of going with rye? And you're 100% rye
100% in rye, mash bill. 100% rye in the mash bill. I'll tell you about the mash bill in a minute. But it was for us, we wanted some significance to tell a story, right? So we love history, and we love drinking, and we love whiskey, right? So we put all those together. And as we were reading like out-of-print books from the 1800s, and they were talking about these different grains, and they're talking about the history of whiskey in America, and particularly in the colonies, particularly in Virginia, right? And the grain of choice in the 1700s, and many of the farms that are still running today out by us are like established in 1750. So we have to set the clock before the Revolution, and remember that people existed here before 1792, right? Yeah. For a long time, like people lived and died before the Revolutionary War. And during that time in the 1700s and then well into the 1800s, this rye whiskey in America in the 1700s was the first craft spirit, really, And so it wasn't, at this time, it was like every farm, and there were thousands of them, right, across Virginia, growing tobacco and growing grains and growing corn and growing, pigs and things like that, was making rye whiskey. And they were making small amounts of it at home. It was a home chore. And they would do it for drinking, but also for medicine and for paint stripper. I mean, you name it, right?
Yeah.
It was, and they could trade it for money too.
Because everyone had their own still.
Yeah, and it was some little thing that would fit on this table right here,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And they just did a little bit of it. So it was the original sort of craft production. You know, you get low, you make a little more, you know, that kind of thing.
Small batch.
Right. And that's the point, is it was the original
Yeah.
small batch. You weren't talking about big industrial operations. In fact, it wasn't until George Washington at Mount Vernon was making rye that he became the biggest industrial distiller in his lifetime.
Yep.
Right? And you've probably seen the Mount Vernon. It's like 10 miles from
Yeah,
here.
beautiful spot.
But it's pretty small. So interesting point, you know, George Washington's distillery, the largest at its time in America, at that time he was doing 60,000 bottles essentially of today's equivalent, okay? That's what we did last year.
It's really interesting too. Another thing we do with those grains out there, can you tell us about recycling those grains, reusing them, and sourcing them?
Letting the farmers be farmers. So we're not farmers. We don't know things about, you know, what grows well, what produces well, what are the problems that different grains have. So we let our farmers decide, and then we evaluate those. And we're in a collaborative kind of relationship with these farmers. And then we'll decide, you know, how does it yield alcohol? What's the flavor taste like? You know, those kinds of things. So Becky will make a mash of just the single grains and then evaluate them for flavor. So then on the other side of the grain, you know, once we've distilled it, fermented it, you know, we were left with a big thing of alcohol-free mash.
Yeah.
And that we give to local farms as well.
Another fun thing that you just started doing, which we just got over at People's, was bingo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was all of a sudden I was like, oh, that, and I didn't know someone had come from Virtue to our restaurant and they had a bingo card
Yeah.
from Catoctin Creek,
That's
and
cool.
wildly exciting, fun stuff. too.
Yeah, it's another way. How can we have fun? How can we grow our business, right? Because we need to grow our business. How can we help those partners of ours who also need to grow their business, right? So let's get people out there, even if you're doing takeout cocktails only, right?
Yeah.
You know, get a cocktail, stamp your bingo card, fill out the grid, you know, get people out moving around in a safe way, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's social distancing as they need to. But, you know, let's get you guys some business, and obviously we want to sell some bottles too.
And much appreciated too.
Yeah.
And again, what we're always trying to do these days too is you want to grow your business, support your neighborhood, and that lineup of restaurants is phenomenal too. And so you look at that, you might even introduce people to new places. If I want to support Catoctin Creek, what are the ways in which I can do that? How do we find your product?
Yeah, so definitely, you know, if you're going out to restaurants or getting carry out, hit those bingo cards. Ask the restaurant, your favorite restaurant, for a bingo card. They have copies, and then you can hit those restaurants and get those drinks and support our partners, because that supports us. You want to come out to the distillery. We're operating at 50% capacity with social distancing.
Yep.
We have outdoor seating and indoor. All my staff are trained on sanitizing and wearing masks and all of that, so we take it very seriously. And so you can come out and do that. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you can order from our store online, catoctincreekstore.com, and we'll either deliver it to you, shipping with FedEx, or we can you could set it for curbside pickup too.
Nice.
So there's a bunch of different ways to do that. We're in your local liquor stores as well. So
Nice.
those are nice ways to support the business.
Well, Scott, thanks for hanging out with us today. Thanks for coming to Old Town, and it's always a pleasure to sit down and get to talk with you. Thanks for coming out and joining us. Absolute pleasure to pick your brain and to be able to chat with you today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Appreciate it.
Well, we can't thank Scott enough for joining us this evening and sharing with us all of his stories. And thank you very much for joining us on our first ever virtual cocktail hour. And of course, you know, John, we love your drinks, so thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And thanks for having us at the store. We had a great time today. And I look forward to joining us next month as we enjoy cocktails from Virtue Feed and Grain. We'll visit our friends over at the Old Town Shop, and we'll talk shop with our buddies over at Jim Beam Suntory. So again, thanks for joining us for our first virtual happy hour. And until next time, be well, Old Town. Cheers.